Hey, Armand here with the scoop on Pluto in Aquarius 2023 till 2044 or something along those lines. It's way far out there. Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for quite some time. Now, let me give you a quick rundown of the agenda here because we're going to do the overview of Pluto in Aquarius. And then we're going to move on to what happens for each sign, some hints, some suggestions for each sign. Before that, and this will be time-stamped, everything is time-stamped, including the different signs. May have to hit show more on the description below, but they'll all be time-stamped. I'm doing that for you. Before the individual signs, there'll be a little introduction to the signs. Be sure you watch that before you watch your sign. It'll only be a minute or so, but watch that first. I mean, if you want to watch the whole thing all the way through, and why not watch all the signs? Because after all, you probably know people who are, you do what you want to do, but watch that first. Okay. So we're going to talk about Pluto in Aquarius. And the odd thing is we can't say much. Here we have one of the most significant transitions and changes in decades, of the decade for sure. And yet it's so hard to say anything about it because the movement of Pluto is so glacially slow. And because he's going to be in Aquarius for so long that we can't even begin to think about all the ways that it's going to manifest. When we look at Saturn spends 3 years in a sign, we could guess about Saturn. Uranus maybe 7 years, even Neptune 14 years, but Pluto's going to be out there for more than 20 years, and the world is going to change so much in that time that what we can say at the very beginning of his passage is very, very limited. We'll have to do updates along the way. This will probably look like a pretty old video in just a few years. The thing, though, is that we can get a little bit of a hint in where some things are going with Pluto in Aquarius, looking at the history of it and looking at some of the aspects that are going to be taking place while he is in the sign. So we can't say too much in specifics. We can't say too much specifically because we can only think about the future in terms of the past. We can't really predict things to be in the future because we only can work with stuff that we already know. And you'll see right away that this is part of how things have worked out for the sign of Aquarius and all the things that it signifies already. And so Pluto's transformation of those things, and indeed the sign of Aquarius itself, is still a big open question mark. Who could have known these things in advance? Now, Pluto moves into Aquarius for the first time, well, for the first time in a long time at any rate, on March 23rd, 2023. That's 3-2-3-2-3, if that means anything to you. And he's going to just get into the sign, and then he's going to back out in June, and then he's going to come back in January of 2024, and then he's going to back out in September, and then he finally gets in the sign to stay in November of 2024. That is, he does a kind of finishing up the business in Capricorn, introducing stuff in Aquarius, going back and forth between the two for really quite some time. It's about 2 years of moving between the two signs. But we'll already be feeling the Aquarius stuff, even as we get sort of the final word on the Capricorn stuff. Now let's think about Pluto. Pluto is the planet of transformation. It is deep transformation. It is at I say glacially slow pace. It is, it's, if Uranus is an earthquake, then Pluto is continental drift. It happens very slowly and subtly. Oh, stuff is going on. But it's not quite that sort of here it is right in your face. In fact, you're usually quite a ways into it before you really see what's going on. That's an exception with Pluto in Aquarius because Aquarius has had a lot of activity lately, what with Saturn and before that Neptune and before that Uranus in the sign. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's think about Aquarius as a sign. It's an air sign. It means it has a lot to do with cognition, the conceptual realm. So Gemini is the first air sign, and Gemini is the dualities that we have within us. It's thinking and feeling. It's having a couple of ideas in your head. It's a little voice on this side and a little voice on that side. Maybe that's an angel and that's a devil, or maybe that's an angel and that's a devil. Who knows? It's also Gemini is also the link between our own rational mortal minds and intuition, that which comes from outside of us. So there's the duality that is within us. Libra is the next air sign, and this is ruled not by Mercury, as Gemini is, but by Venus, the planet of love, relationship, aesthetics, and things like that. In Libra, it's the consideration that each of us has towards the other. There's me and my perspective, or my perspectives. I have all these different things going on, but I'm interacting with you. I'm seeing what you have to say. So my multiple Gemini perspectives interact with your multiple Gemini perspectives, and we come to an agreement, the little seesaw of Libra, the balances. What is my perspective and your perspective? I can see what you're saying. Aquarius is a group sign. It's not just about me. It's not just about me and you. It's about all of us. What is here for all of us? What do we all agree on? What do we all see as the goal? What do we all see as the ideal? And so in that way, it's very, very much a collective sign, not so very personal. Let's do a little history for a moment, okay? Last time Pluto was in Capricorn was back in the 1700s, and one of the sort of signature events of that time was the American Revolution. Right, so we have Capricorn, very, very Britain, UK Capricorn, for reasons that have to do with the formation charts and things like that. And so we had a shaking of those Capricornian foundations, right? And there was this sort of move away from tradition. You recall that a big part of the American Revolution was the idea we're not going to have a king. That was a big part of it. We can really get into it, not in this video. So that was the Capricornian revolution, or the Capricornian transformation of Pluto in Capricorn. The American Constitution, however, the setting forth of what our ideals are, what are the rules by which we're going to play the game, what is our collective ideal, that happened with Pluto in Aquarius. So we're looking at our shared ideals. The problem with ideals is that they don't map onto reality all that well. It's like, it's like when you learn in high school social studies class, they tell you how everything works, right? They tell you this is the way the government works, and this is the way, the United Nations works, and so on. And we have all of these, later on you go on, you can study the Constitution, you can see how things got put together and what the ideas were. That's all very Aquarian. And then it doesn't map onto reality all that well. It does, that's not exact. The world doesn't work the way they taught you in high school social studies class. It works a little bit differently. We aspire to the ideal, but we often fall quite short of that for all kinds of reasons. And the lack of mapping onto reality means that the ideals have to get solidified. We have to hold on to those ideals, but we don't have to. But we tend to hold on to those ideals all the more tightly. And that can result in isms. Isms are very Aquarian. Okay, so in the last 100 years or so, we've had communism and socialism and fascism. We've had all kinds of isms. Even existentialism is an ism. And it's very Aquarian. It's very secular. It's very cognitive. These are ideals that are mapped out with philosophy. Contrast that with Sagittarian beliefs. Sagittarian beliefs are about, what we all believe. But we're not necessarily, trying to substantiate that with any kind of logic or anything. But when we get to isms, we're using the brain, we're using the cognitive side, not so much the heart, not so much any organ of faith, whatever the organ of faith is, we are saying this is what our ideas are, and this is what the ideals are that come from that. And so we get isms. And here we have the two sides of the coin of Aquarius, and the two sides that we'll be looking at with Pluto in Aquarius. On the one hand, we look to the ideals, and on the other hand, we look to the fossilization of the ideals into isms. And so we have, on the positive side of Pluto in Aquarius, we have the opening up of greater freedom, greater equality for everyone. And on the dark side of Pluto in Aquarius, we have the isms. We have the tyranny of the majority. That is the Pluto in Aquarius, generally speaking, any outer planet in Aquarius danger is the fossilization of the ideal. You know, this is the kind of situation where you get into where you have folks that are really doing the best for humanity, but nothing so good for the individual. Now, we're going to see the best of Pluto in Aquarius, and we're going to see the worst of Pluto in, well, I hope we don't see the worst of Pluto in Aquarius, but we're going to see the lighter side, and we're going to see the darker side of Pluto in Aquarius for sure. And if the American Revolution happened with Pluto in Capricorn, the French Revolution happened with Pluto in Aquarius. And that was all about equality and fraternity and liberty. And they took it in a pretty dark direction. So you got to be aware that both of these sides, hopefully without those extremes, hopefully without, you know, lots of problems stemming from it, are going to be in the works, hopefully in much more attenuated versions. And one more consideration. Pluto in Aquarius, very much about leveling the playing field, very much about everybody has an equal chance. It's a very difficult placement if you're going to be perceived as elitist. It's not great, for example, for royalty. They've been having trouble for a while, but it's not great for people who are, in general, seen as being royalty, people who are special. It's not a great time for Leos, I hate to say it, but it's not a wonderful time for people who are viewed as being special. And we've already started to see with Saturn in Aquarius that some folks who are generally, you know, a little bit more, it's about me and all the wonderful things that I'm going to do, getting taken down a peg. And that's going to continue with Pluto in Aquarius. So tough for royalty everywhere, tough for anybody who is perceived as being the royalty of their position. So let's look at a few things that we could say with Pluto in Aquarius. We can't say a lot because it's going to be there for 20 years and things are going to change in ways that we cannot imagine in 2023, but we can say some things. And we can say some things because we know a little bit about what happens when the outer planets go through Aquarius and when they've gone through Aquarius recently. For example, Uranus went through Aquarius in the late 1990s, 96, 97 or so, into the early 2000s. And that was the real beginning of the internet. It wasn't the beginning of the internet. Don't tell me it was. I know it wasn't the beginning, but it was, you know, it was the point in time at which we really got into it, when it became a thing for us on a cultural level. Everybody got online at that time. I got online at that time. And that was what we might call the AOL phase of the internet. Right? Everybody, America Online, we're all just getting started. You Got Mail was the movie, right? You know, that was the whole thing back in the day. And then Uranus went into Pisces, and right around 2002 or so, we had Neptune came into Aquarius. So it was earlier than that. Neptune came into Aquarius because he left in 2011. So we had Neptune in Uranus's sign of Aquarius and Uranus in Neptune's sign of Pisces. They were in mutual reception. And this was through the latter part of the first decade of this century. And so this would be what we might call, let's say, the social media or the Facebook phase. right? This is when we really, started to live our lives online. There was a game out back in the day, Second Life, right at the sort of early peak time. It was like you got your little avatar where you made up your avatar, and your avatar went to the store and bought things, and it was like an early version of the metaverse. It was very popular. It may still be very popular. I don't hear much about it, so I'm assuming it's not. But we move on from things kind of quickly. So that was the second phase of the internet. That we had, Uranus, the planet of technology, in the idealistic sign of Pisces, in this no boundary sign of Pisces, and then Neptune, the Piscean planet of no boundaries, in the sign of technology, Aquarius. And so we had that sort of blossoming phase. Well, now, as time has moved on, Uranus is now all the way out in Taurus, and Neptune is in his own home sign of Pisces, and nobody's really has been minding the Aquarian side of things for quite some time. And then in the last few years, from 2020 on, Saturn came in, and Saturn said, okay, now, are the social media, they're not responsible. They're not paying attention to what they should be. They say that they're just, channels, but really they're content. And how do we regulate it? Can we regulate it? It's funny. I saw just the other day, and I'm saying this in March of 2023, a congressperson in the United States was saying about artificial intelligence, this isn't going to be the social media of this decade. We're going to regulate it right from the very beginning. Well, we'll see. We'll see about the ability to regulate things when the outer planets are going through. Saturn kind of tried when he was in Aquarius, and now we'll see. So the internet, our communication, social media, all of those Aquarian things are going to be deeply transformed with Pluto in the sign. Again, there'll be the positive side of the metaverse, and there'll be the ridiculous side of it and all of that. So we're going to get the full story on all of that over the course of time. So that's something to watch out for. That is a very Pluto in Aquarius issue. Something that we saw a great deal of with Saturn in Aquarius, and we'll be seeing more of it, or we'll be seeing new sides of it, we'll be seeing extremes of it, are things like cancel culture and the extremes of political correctness, and that, the whole business around that. Social justice and those kinds of issues are going to become very polarized. You think, well, they're already polarized, Armand. What are you telling us here? With Pluto in Aquarius, they're going to reach new extremes. So you're going to see an expansion and a deepening of the issues that have been around for quite some time. So I would expect that is something we will get an early dose of as Pluto moves into Aquarius. That's the kind of thing that can happen quickly. You don't have to wait. The internet and all those transformations, we have to wait on technology to catch up. Not so much with some of these other social issues that are going to be very hot. And, keep in mind, Pluto, all of the outer planets, they're not taking sides. This is not, Pluto is going to do this, and, it's not like that at all. The planets give us the issues. The planets give us the things to deal with, and then we deal with them. And generally speaking, especially with Pluto, you think, well, it's this thing on the left, or it's this thing on the right, and then there's left, and then there's right, and you think it's like this fight between left and right. That's not what's happening. It's like the old cars that they have on the railroad, where you push down, this person pushes down, the other person goes up, and then they push down, and it keeps going this way, seesawing. It's not about pushing up and down on the left or the right. It's about where the cart is going. It's going in a different direction that is not described. And that we always see that with Pluto. We always see it's not this side of the argument or that side of the argument, right? Those are relative. They're important. I don't care about these things. They're important. You should care about them. We all care about them. It's not that they're unimportant. It's that this side or that side, it's not about who's going to win. It's about the effort that we put in moving us into a completely different place. So whether it's social justice or the internet or regulation of any of these things, these are all matters that we're going to see transformation that happens that could not possibly be anticipated. So keep that in mind. Now, there are a few aspects that Pluto is going to be making in his time in Aquarius. Well, there are going to be a lot of aspects that Pluto makes during his time in Aquarius. But one of the most significant that's coming up relatively in the short term is that Uranus will eventually get into Gemini and will make a trine relationship with Pluto. And that happens between the summer of 2026 and the spring of 2028. Simultaneously, at that time, we have a few other things going on, like that Neptune-Pluto sextile, which has been in orb for like about 140, well, for about 100 years, a little less, is going to perfect again. And Saturn will square Pluto in 2028. And if you're thinking, well, 2028 will be the opening square of the Saturn-Pluto cycle that began in 2020. So we're, some of the social determinants that got put in place back then are going to be up for review at that time. At the same time that Uranus, is actually the landlord, if you will, of Aquarius. It's his sign, is going to be in a trine relationship to Pluto. I would expect technological stuff to be really quite interesting around that time. We'll have to see. But also, this is definitely a time when we're going to see very fast-moving changes in all areas of life. That's quite a period of time. The end of the 2020s is going to be quite the exciting period of time. And by exciting, I mean, yeah, who knows, right? We'll see. So those are some things to think about in the big picture. Now let's move on to what happens for each sign. Now, for each sign, we have a few keywords, and that's all you get. Is it for your ascendant sign or your sun sign? Well, I would guess that sun sign probably works better in this case than ascendant sign, because with ascendant, you kind of really need to know where the house cusps are and so on. Certainly when Pluto enters your house, it's going to be a big deal, but you can't really, there's a lot of possibilities. From the perspective of the sun, however, you feel it. You feel it. Now, Pluto transit, if you say your sun is in Aquarius, right? Well, if your sun is at the beginning of Aquarius, you'll have a Pluto transit to your sun right away, sometime in the 2023 to 2025 period of time. If, on the other hand, you're way out at 29 degrees or so of Aquarius, well, it's going to be another 20 or so years before you have that exact transit. So can we say much about any sun in Aquarius? We can say a little bit about it. And that's why we can't say, it's funny, Pluto, the bigger, heavier changes, we can say the least about, because those changes are incremental and slow. But you know what? Even if your sun is out at 29 degrees and it doesn't get the exact transit for quite some time, you feel it. You feel it. Pluto is a heavy enough weight. It's like a gravitational pull or force that it's going to have an effect, even if it's not getting to your particular point or planet right away or for a long, long time. Okay, so it is going to have an effect and you will feel it. So, to be honest with you, even Pluto transits, when they are direct, when they are happening to you now, often they sort of function a little bit out of your consciousness. Something's going on. You've got that unease or anticipation, maybe we can call it excitement, that things are changing, but it's not like Saturn or Uranus that really hit you over the head and say, hey, this is happening. You get things that happen because of triggers to the transit and so on, but Not always. In fact, quite often, not all the time, but quite often, Pluto transits actually have something happen when they're over, sort of after the fact that you sort of realize what's gone on. So this is sort of a subtle energy. So we're talking about for each sun sign. This is a simple little, these are the houses that are affected. This is not the rocket science over here. This is not the astrological stuff here. This is just basic stuff, but it's all you can say. But if you check in every so often, you say, you know what? Wow, since 2023, my relationship life, home life, career, finances really have changed. And one more little thing, which I'll reinforce, in case the Scorpios couldn't sit and watch through this. If you have a prominent Pluto, right? If you're a Scorpio, for example, if you have Scorpio rising, particularly, your Pluto's pawn in the game. Pawn, not porn. Well, it's Pluto, so maybe it's porn. Your Pluto's pawn in the game. And what is very likely is that you'll get dramatic, but not quite antagonistic experiences of these transits. So keep that in mind too. Well, let's start with Aquarius. I mean, for Aquarius, look, your life is changing. It is about you. It is about you. It's the very sense of self, the things that you identify with. And that's the soul level sun is, what your life is really about. And then the ego level sun is what you identify with in your life because it reflects the soul. The soul, I'm saying, is probably okay, not really subject to that much change, even from Pluto. But the ego, the things that are reflecting the soul, they can change quite a bit, and they'll actually help the soul to express itself more. That's a nice thing for Aquarius. Of course, Aquarius is a fixed sign and may not be so happy about the changes. But you know what? Let's not say that it's going to be unhappy about the changes either. So for Aquarius, it's about getting your life to look more like the soul level you. And isn't that a good thing? I think that's a good thing. Let's go backwards around the zodiac and do Capricorn. Because Capricorn, you're getting Pluto out of your house, and that's got to feel good. That's a good feeling type of thing. Except he's going to come into your house of finances. Doesn't mean that you're going to be ruined financially or anything like that. It doesn't mean you're going to get wealthy. It means that your way of managing, dealing with, getting with, and spending finances is going to change and transform. It will do so glacially slow, as I have been saying over and again. If you watch the beginning part of the video, it's going to happen very, very slowly. Pay a lot of attention to it because really you want to work with this energy rather than work against it. Going back one more sign, we get to Sagittarius. And Sagittarius, this is a third house transit for you. And well, we might look at things like commuting and transportation. We could look at the local neighborhood might be changing, and that might be a fairly significant change for a lot of folks. It could be a matter of changes with siblings. So any of those things might be subject to change. Your daily routine. You think the daily routine isn't important. You want something exciting to be happening, right? Well, the daily routine is the background upon which all the exciting stuff happens. It's the canvas that family and relationship and career get painted onto. No, it's the background which the foreground images get painted onto. Anyway, it's not unimportant. It's not unimportant. And your daily routine, the grocery store, the dry cleaners, whatever that daily routine is, it matters. Pay attention to it, Sagittarius. Scorpio, it's fourth house. Home, family, where you live, who you're living with. These are big changes for you. And of course, Scorpio is also a fixed sign. And so changes, well, they're greeted with, this way and that kind of thing. The saving grace is that Pluto is your planet. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. And so the changes that he's affecting ultimately are working for you. I mean, you know, more or less for you. So Scorpio, yes, big changes. I mean, not everybody who's a Scorpio is going to move. Not everybody who's a Scorpio is going to have a significant adjustment with their family. Not everybody with Scorpio is going to have some sort of thing going on with their house. It's not necessarily going to be directly you experiencing these things in a sharp way, but there's going to be change and transformation in these areas for sure. Libra, it's a fifth house transit. So what we're going to look at for this is your creativity. Your creativity, what you do that expresses yourself, what you do that expresses your soul. Where are you doing that which you love? And how is that going to maybe change? The things that we love, the things that we're so invested in, they change over time. How you express yourself creatively. Maybe you haven't been very creative and it's time to be. Or, maybe you've been into music and it's time to explore visual arts as well, or things like that. Very, very much a matter of, or, maybe you love to go skiing and it's time to take up archery. I don't know. You get the basic idea, though. We're looking at changes in that which you do, which gives you joy. Maybe some things that gave you joy are not going to feel that great anymore, Libra. Like, sometimes you're like, gee, I always used to like doing this, but lately I'm just feeling a little flat about it. That is a Pluto transit to your fifth house. Virgo. Virgo, this is a transit to your sixth house. Now, sixth house would be health, but you're already taking care of yourself because you're Virgo. You're already looking at things. You're already sensitive enough to things and so on. So that's not likely to be much of a thing for you. In fact, Virgo's a sign, the sixth house for Virgo is the Virgo house. It is the sign of service. So you're lining up with this energy quite well, more or less. Where you're likely to see changes is in work, your work routine, your relationship with your coworkers. You may find that you really need to do a lot of work. You need to do a lot of work in this area. That which flowed relatively easily now requires a lot of effort. And depending upon your chart, it's entirely possible that which required a lot of effort will start to flow easily. But Virgo is likely to be about work, service, where you're putting your efforts. Leo, this is opposite you. This is a seventh house. This is relationship. Well, that sounds like it might be good, right? So transformation of relationship. And once more, we have a fixed sign. Leo's a fixed sign. Doesn't necessarily, relish the idea of big changes. That's where we might find a little bit of a problem there. Let's not call it a problem, but big changes don't necessarily sit that well with the fixed signs. But relationship life is likely to transform. If you have clients, client work is likely to transform. If you are a therapist or an astrologer, is likely to have changes in that area of life. And for some people, not you, but for some people, possibility that there comes somebody in as an opponent that needs to be dealt with over the course of time. So with Pluto in your seventh house, it's about the other. It's about learning to take the other's perspective is a big part of it, whether it's relationship or whether it's clients or whether it's some other kind of thing. Learning to take the other person's perspective is what the big lesson is for Leo. But relationships are the area of life that transform. If you happen to be of the sign of Cancer, this is an eighth house relationship. There's a couple of things to say about that because Pluto is naturally the eighth house planet. And so this is a intensification of your eighth house and eighth house issues. Now, that could be things like inheritances. It could be things like your partner's finances. It can be things that have to do with insurance and taxes. And for the next 20 so years, Cancer, I would be very, very scrupulous about all of these things. Dealing with these kinds of monsters, You don't have to, it's not like you're going to have a big problem, but you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that would create a problem. Okay, so if you have your sun in the sign of Cancer, you don't want to stir up troubles. You want to be very honest with the insurance and taxes. You want to make sure that banks, well, you have to figure that one out for yourself, given the situation in 2023. But you want to make sure that your credit cards, your debt does not get out of hand. That's very, very important, Cancer, because the 8th house is the sign of debt, and you don't want to get in a position where you're, essentially going bankrupt. It's not going to happen for most. And I mean, again, depending upon your chart, Pluto in the 8th house could be the best thing in the world. And I'm not saying anything bad is going to happen in the area of debt and, your credit card is going to ruin you or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying act so that you don't invite that kind of problem. That's the big thing. On a different level, Pluto going through your 8th house is a real big psychological transit. This is really about getting down deep. It's sort of a shamanic journey down to your very core. So whatever is going on up on the surface dealing with these types of issues, or if nothing is going on those issues, this is a time to get very deep and deal with things that are way down there and bring them up and work with them and get them out there. It's probably not going to be all that pleasant, but crabs are used to rolling around under the sea and all the sand and muck and stuff like that. So you guys can handle it. You guys can handle it. Be sure that you do. Gemini, on the other hand, this is a 9th house transit. Now, your belief system may be changed a little bit. This could shift your beliefs, especially as collectively we get into some really challenging territory with the isms and what's going on. We see this as being an opportunity to make a shift, change your beliefs, maybe explore different cultures, foreign cultures, or other belief systems. So you're maybe moving out of your comfort zone, whatever that's been, and towards something rather new. If you are a Taurus, this is a 10th house energy. Very likely in our society, this would be career, it's reputation. There could be some real changes that come up in this area of life, perhaps some challenges, but some real changes and transformation. The thing, Taurus, is that this is a motion that is pushing you towards being your authentic self in the area of career. It's pushing you to be who you are, to do what you're here to do, what you're meant to do. Not necessarily comfortable. Taurus is a fixed sign, we all know. Not necessarily comfortable, not necessarily, leaving us in a happy sort of place where we think this is, this is well accepted, but rather what really resonates with you. Now, Uranus has already been running through the sign of Taurus and shaking things up and giving you a hint about where things need to go. And here comes Pluto into your 10th house and is giving you another hint about where things need to go. It has to do with career, has to do with transformation of your career, your reputation. Don't do anything that would get your reputation in hot water. Or, try your best anyway. But do pay attention to how you're seen and what you're doing out in the world. Be as authentic as possible. And then moving back from Taurus into Aries. Aries, now you're going to have Pluto in your 11th house. One thing that you're going to notice is that friends who are not really friends are gone. Okay, so this is the Aries thing. If you're not really connecting on a deep level, you're likely to lose them. And the answer is you're probably pretty happy that you're going to lose them. It's Pluto, so there might be a little bit of a struggle. Letting go might be a bit of a struggle. You might want to hold on to those folks that you've had around since forever, and it may be difficult, but ultimately Pluto is moving you towards being with the folks that you really share the same ideals with, because this is, Pluto's in the Aquarius, which is the 11th house sign, it is your 11th house. So you're really in concert with this. I want to be with people who share my ideals. Certainly in our very polarized political society in, well, the US and many other countries, this could very much mean that, you and your friends, at least, the initial energy here might be that you and your friends don't get along because of political, social types of disagreements. But ultimately, it's about connecting with people that really do reflect you on a deeper level. And that brings us to Pisces, who are having a 12th house transit. Now, Pluto in your 12th house is a little bit of a thing, Pisces. It's a good thing that you have Neptune in the house for a little while longer. And of course, you got Saturn coming through the house, which is not a barrel of laughs either. Pluto is going through your 12th house. We don't really know. We don't really know. It is change and transformation that is coming from places that you can't see. It could very well be opening you up to all kinds of spiritual. You're Pisces, and you've got Neptune in your sign. It could very well be opening you up to another level of sensitivity and awareness. It could be that some difficult characters come in and you need to practice a little bit of psychic protection. Saturn in Pisces is going to help you with that. And I don't think it's going to be much of a thing for many of us or anything like that. Do pay attention to your dream world, though, Pisces, because there's lots of stuff coming in. Pisces is really lit up at this point in time and will be for quite some time. So pay attention to that, Pisces. At least through 2026, you have to pay attention to what is going on. All right, there is a brief, inadequate summary, but you cannot do anything but be brief and inadequate when it comes to Pluto going through Aquarius. He's going to be there for a very long time. We cannot begin to guess all the manifestations that are going to take place.